Please.
I'm Martin Bunzel from the Philosophy Department of Rutgers. This is a great presentation, and I wanted to thank you, but I wanted to make a procedural plea to both you and the last speaker. I know we come at this with a great deal of enthusiasm from our own specialization, but I caution against inadvertently feeding the Lincoln nature of the discourse. Neuroanatomists have an infatuation with fear, and while it's important, I wish there was more discussion of diffidence and the role of diffidence with regard to political motivation. And when you say the rational model is a myth, I think those are fighting words, if I may say so. There's much to say about the rational model of economics. There's much to say where it's useful and where it's not. And when you say legislation is incremental, and you ignore the history of the end of slavery, the history of civil rights, ending segregation, the history of busing, I think you underplay the importance of the role of government in doing radical change in which the goal is to organize people to acquiesce to changes they may not want to see. So that's just a general...
Well, let me respond to that. I think those are fair points and good criticisms, so I accept them. My goal was not to actually dismiss the rational model, but really to refer to what we were seeing was that it has a undue prominence, it seems. And
that's fine. It's just not...
And I take your point. And I do take your point. And as far as legislation, we need it to work. And if it can work, bless us. If it doesn't, if we're not getting there, we have to have alternative paths. But it's not 1.0 versus 2.0, it's together. So thank you for helping clarify those points, and I received that. Yes?
My question follows Martin's. John Nation of Middlebury College. You underplay governance here and how all these communities that are working together are reaching up or reaching across, call it what you will. So you left us with this provocative idea that we're going from being adversaries to being partners. So could you just speak a little bit more in that realm, picking up perhaps on your
Yeah. And again, I want to just underscore there's no other here. There's getting the whole system to work. And when one part of the system is not working, another part of the system has to step up, particularly. But what we try to do is, first of all, I'm brought in to work with cities. That's who hires me, or hires our institute. So our job is to help a city achieve its carbon footprint reduction generally. Sometimes I'm brought in by community groups that work with their cities, and if they're not, we say you need to, because the whole system has to work together. What we found happening in the non-adversarial mode is citizens, I'll tell you a story. We worked with the city of Portland, and they were early adopters for this program, and they invited there's a group called PTI, which is a subset of the National League of Cities, to come and hear about this, because they weren't believing this was happening. This was not their experience of how cities worked. And so we presented the whole thing. We had citizens present their story. We had the different departments, solid waste, water, energy, talk about their experiences. And at the end of the day, people thought they had gone to some kind of evangelical session. They did not know what to do with it, and it totally changed their whole, it pushed against their mental maps of how they saw government work and how they related to citizens. And what we found happen was that the common conversation that they were hearing was, we are doing our part, citizen, but you, government, need to help us go further. Not you're not doing your part, but we need your help to go further. We need the bike lanes. We need the legislation passed, to your point. And that partnership started happening, and then the citizens started inspiring and motivating the politicians to be more bold in their legislative agenda. And then the legislative agenda was now keyed into the citizen demands for certain types of legislation that they're willing to actually support because they needed to do it to live the lifestyles that they were choosing. So that's the dynamic that I see between the 1.0 and the 2.0. Yes, please.
Stockton Williams, Living Cities. I'm interested if you could describe a little bit the demographic diversity in the communities that you've implemented the program in today, particularly around race and income, and whether you've seen any differences in take-up rate and other...
Great question. Yeah. Primarily, this is the demographic. Middle class, upper middle class, and we have done a lot of work in inner cities, but the whole model changes because they're particularly low-income environments. We have to speak to what we call affordable comfort and the economic incentive, but also safety. Getting to know my neighbors creates a safer, healthier neighborhood. But primarily our early adopters are people who care about the environment or who care about their neighborhood. Those are the two people that were taking this up. And we have found that you can actually take it into the whole community. You have to make lots of adjustments, and most cities that hire us want to make sure that it's dealing with the whole community. So it can't just be with some subset that are receptive. So we've learned a lot about how to build, for example, this in inner city neighborhoods. And find, again, co-benefits. The co-benefits are the three that I mentioned, but also some of the more survival or sustainability level issues of that kind of community.
We have time for one more question.
Thanks for your presentation. When I look at the footprint of
I'm sorry, sir.
Sorry, I'm Terry Krasinski. When I look at the footprint of an organization, I see production, electricity, travel, procurement, but also ownership. So if you're a city, or if you're a community, or if you're a university, can you talk to us about how the ownership, the institutional ownership, what the portfolios own, can be a significant part of that footprint? And can we not reduce that as well? You mentioned that might be a key element.
So designing a strategy that also includes the institutions of the community, the businesses and...
Well, if you're working with the city of Portland, they have a pension fund. So what if they committed to reducing the footprint of their pension fund at the same time?
Well,
And that, when you look at an organization,
yeah.
diversity, a significant percentage of their footprint comes from their ownership.
You raise a good point. We haven't gotten to that level yet.
I think it's critical to do.
I think that you're right. I mean, I'll close with a bigger question. When we did this analysis, and we're working, for example, with the city of Davis right now, and they have a carbon footprint goal of being 51% footprint reduction by 2013. This is the boldest goal of any city that I'm aware of in the country. And that's because they want to become carbon neutral, which is the new kind of cool factor for cities. We figured we can get about 25% reduction through scaling up residential behavior change. But the next 75% has to come from a whole system solution, where you start to work with every single part of the system, including economic development, because we're building demand. We have to build the supply. We have to build the green economy. So a whole system has to be brought together. But what we've been able to bring to that conversation, or that party, if you will, is the demand side. And if you can get the demand side to meet the supply side, you start to have a very different conversation. And I think it's what you're describing as part of that. So more to be said, but for now, enough.
David.